and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect the views of the host, content creators, or the production company. Welcome to the Foundations of Freedom podcast with Jerome Huyler. I'm Vlad Gutenmaker, and I'll be your host as we sit down with Jerome to explore the principles that built and can still save the American Republic. A strong, vigorous economy runs on a division of labor. Some people produce the goods, others provide the services that we all rely on. But behind every job, every business, every part of daily life are the political decisions that are made in our name. We elect the lawmakers who shape the conditions in which we either prosper or perish. That's why we must all be informed, engaged citizens. Our forefathers spoke of civic virtue and knew the republic couldn't survive without it. While other platforms focus on the headlines of the day, this podcast goes deeper to uncover the root causes of our national decline and offer real remedies. Because yes, this nation is ailing. To preserve the American dream, we'll need to recover the founding principles that once made it possible and start applying the solutions we already have. So if you find value in these conversations, don't forget to follow this podcast, leave a review, share it with others who care about the future of this country. All right, let's get started. Here's today's episode of Foundations of Freedom podcast with Jerome Huyler. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Foundations of Freedom with Dr. Jerome Huyler. My name is Vlad Gutenmaker, and I will be the co-host today with Dr. Jerome Huyler. So this is episode number 1 of many more provocative podcasts, hopefully to come. This is literally the ground floor. What is this all about, you're wondering? So, well, Dr. Huyler is about to go really deep and wide about certain ideas and principles and really forgotten truths that have helped shape the American founding era and what they mean for us today. So, Dr. Huyler, please introduce yourself. Say hello before we get into what this particular episode, or our first episode of the Foundations of Freedom podcast, are really going to be all about.
Hello, Vladimir. Very happy to be with you today. My name is Dr. Jerome Huyler. I am your host for this podcast series, along with my partner, Vladimir. Many of you may know me from Quora.com, where I've amassed 4 million views. My PhD is in political science. I am a former assistant professor. I taught intellectual history, moral and political philosophy at Seton Hall University for many years. I am the author of Locke in America, The Moral Philosophy of the Founding Era, which was my doctoral dissertation. And, I think very often still about what Gerald Ford said way back in 1976. He warned, a government that is big enough to give you anything you want is big enough to take everything you have. I sat up when I heard him in his debate with Jimmy Carter, and I wrote that quote down. I've been saying it and thinking about it ever since. I wrote a book called Everything You Have, The Case Against Welfare. That book is still in print, and it's very much available.
All right, thank you for that introduction. So let's get right to it, right? So the question I'm sure everybody's talking about at the dinner table and everywhere else, what do you think about Donald Trump?
What do I think about Donald Trump? Well, I guess I could say this. He is, to our times, what George Washington was to the American Revolution.
Wow.
The indispensable man. The indispensable man. I know of no other man or woman in America who has the self-confidence, the energy, the stamina, the backbone, the experience, and the raw grit to take on so many of this nation's problems all at once. That's about what I think of him. He understands that a government spends too much Our government spends too much and is way too big. He wants genuinely to get government out of our pockets and off of our backs. And he's the only man in America who is standing up to all of the forces that are aligned against him. That's pretty much what I think of him.
So that's definitely a very positive opinion, and yeah, I that's quite setting the bar quite high for him, comparing him with George Washington. But I do agree with you. If not for his reelection, I think this country would continue to head down the path that, um, let's say, the opposition to his party has been taking us. And I don't want to just make a blanket statement like all the Democrats. I think there's a lot of groups in both parties and other parties as well that are really trying to, let's just be frank, destroy the country as we know it and change it into something else. And I think this started with many previous administrations. The next thing that I wanted to ask you is, how about his really ambitious goals that he's trying to accomplish? Do you think he's going to accomplish them? What do you think's going to get in his way? My fear, my gut kind of tells me that, maybe he's like other politicians where he's making a lot of promises he's not going to deliver. What do you think about all his very ambitious goals?
Okay, first, let me go through his major policies and give you my estimate of their beneficial or harmful relationship to the country. There is his effort to close the border, which is already phenomenally successful, and his effort to deport migrant criminals who came into the country illegally, are committing crime, or were criminals in their former countries, and his strong effort under Tom Homan to get rid of them, to deport them. I support his efforts 100%. Why? A country is as great as it is free. Donald Trump wants to make America great again. And a country is as great as it is free. He understands that. He's never said it in so many words. He understands that implicitly. Now, what we learned in 9/11 is that if a people do not feel safe, they cannot feel free. In order to feel safe, you got to get the criminals off our streets and out of our country. That's what his deportation policies amount to, and prevent any future criminals from coming across the border and getting into the country. So I am fully in support of his efforts in closing the border and deporting certainly criminal migrants. Now, the problem, as I'm going to explain in this and in future episodes, is not necessarily how government raises its revenue, it's how much government is spending. And what I think we're going to be discussing very often on these podcasts is, what must government do for us, and what must we be allowed and expected to do for ourselves and one another. I'm going to talk about his effort to cut taxes, because that is how he gets government out of our pockets and off of our backs. I've often written this: any family that's paying upwards of 50% in combined federal, state, local income taxes, property taxes, payroll taxes, sales taxes, social security taxes, utility taxes, and capital gains taxes is not at all free. They're already...
You left out the death taxes.
Estate taxes. You're absolutely right. Well, also known as the estate taxes.
Right.
And that is so important to include. And I don't think I've ever mentioned estate taxes in this list, I will from now on, that's for sure. Yes, so he knows the importance of cutting taxes. I certainly support that effort to cut taxes because it provides the incentive for Americans and foreign investors to build their factories, create their plants, hire their workers in this country. The lower the taxes are, the lower the cost of doing businesses, the more business is going to get done. And that is easily a way to restore American prosperity, not to mention all the opportunities that a wide open free market has to offer. So that's my view of his tax policies. I
So
certainly support his effort to get biological men out of women's athletics and out of their locker rooms and their bathrooms. So as far as that goes, the president and I are totally in sync. As someone who is attempting to end the war in Ukraine, the war between Russia and Ukraine, and end the suffering, the hardship, the death that has been taking place over the last 3 years, that brings out Donald Trump's humanitarian streak. He
yeah,
is a
he's talking about
humanitarian.
peace. These people shouldn't be dying. That's what he's saying. That we need to end the war. Why
That's
are we
exactly
fighting?
right. And he doesn't have to take on that international foreign policy, but he does anyway.
Yeah, I
Again,
mean, let's talk about it, but stop killing, right? Stop
yep,
killing
exactly.
everybody. Yeah.
Now, uh, the main issue now, I think, is his policy on tariffs. And there I can be just a tad critical. Now, I believe he is doing the right thing in imposing taxes. There's nothing wrong with imposing taxes on the basis of reciprocity. In other words, reciprocal tariffs on foreign countries to match the tariffs they put on
Right.
American
It's only fair.
exporters.
They charge what they charge, we charge back, right? That's fair.
A tariff, reciprocal tariffs are another word for fairness, another word for justice. And if I believe in anything in this life, I believe in justice.
That's
Everyone
something he's
getting what
always
they're
talked
due.
about is we're getting ripped off. Why are we getting ripped off, right? They're
I
charging you.
I heard him talk about that in 1984 and 1987 on talk shows with Oprah Winfrey. He hasn't changed his mind. However, I believe the most important policy adjustment he could make is getting his tax cuts through Congress. I think that dealing with tariffs first and taxes almost as an afterthought, though he's active on the phones trying to get his proposals done. But the resolution process is very difficult. It allows the Senate to avoid a filibuster and pass a budget bill with 51 votes. That's important. I think his tax cutting program, he wants to end tax on tips. Billionaires don't make tips. Ordinary Americans do. He wants to end Social Security taxes on senior citizens who go back to work and make money and such. He wants to end taxes on overtime work. And again, billionaires don't collect much overtime. So this is for the middle classes that he's doing this. I also think, and I'm hearing less and less of this, his intent to make corporate business taxes not to 21% they are now, but down to 15%. That will invite such investment in new plants and factories. Pharmaceuticals will come back to America. We don't have to get them from China. So all of that is so important. I think his presidency will rise and fall on his ability to get those tax cuts through. As a matter of
So,
fact,
do you think that the president's going to accomplish that? And do you think that they're going to those proposals they're going to get through the Congress and the very difficult reconciliation process?
I I am not sure. and I'm not sure if there are enough Republicans to sign on. I wish Donald Trump would use his considerable energies to peel off 7 or 8 Democrats, moderate Democrats, Democrats who are going to be up for re-election in states that Donald Trump carried handily. If he can get 7 or 8 Democrats to vote with the Republicans, there are already 53 Republicans in the Senate. He needs 60 votes to end the filibuster and enact any bill he proposes. Any bill that goes through the House of Representatives, he will be able to push through the Senate with 60 votes. So I wish he would use his considerable energies to do that. Short of that, I don't know. The leaders of the House and Senate say that the bills will pass by the summer. That's pretty late for us to have to wait till July or
Don't they
August.
take off for the summer? Don't they all take a summer break?
Well, actually, you're right. They work very little during the summer, but I guess they'll come back to Washington if it means passing the tax cuts.
Sure,
They will.
By
the way, Donald Trump, at one point in his campaign, he proposed another tax cut. He proposed that anyone who serves in the military or in law enforcement will be exempt from federal income taxes.
That would be the best. Oh, that would be such an honor to those people. Firefighters, I think it should definitely go to others as well.
Can you imagine?
So many people, they risk their lives, they give their lives to this country. That's a great thing.
And not only that, but if you think of the reason why we are taxed, it is first and foremost to protect us, to get the protection. Why should the men and women who are providing the protection have to also pay for the protection that they themselves are providing?
That's really the top job, was supposed to be the only job, well, not the only, but the main job of the federal government is to protect this country, not do all these other things. And I don't want to get off on a different topic. There's going to be many more podcasts to come where we'll talk about these things. And I know that's actually one of your books is about that, what I was kind of alluding to. Let's not go off on a tangent for this first podcast. Let me ask you one more question. So, is there, in your opinion, a better way to go about it, about what he's trying to do, and what should the country do? And when I say the country, I mean all the people, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, left, right, up, down. All of us are Americans. What should the country do to avoid the calamities to come?
Well, first of all, we have to cut taxes. That's what I've said. That gives opportunity and incentives for people to start new businesses and expand existing businesses and create prosperity and increase the supply of goods relative to the demand. More workers means more products being produced, and that is anti-inflationary. That would be a very healthy development. But along with tax cuts, there have got to be steep spending cuts. The country is already $36 trillion the national debt, national debt, and we are paying out $1 trillion a year just to retire the annual interest charge on that colossal debt.
Yeah, I think if more people knew the situation and actually understood the numbers and the consequences, there would be an uproar. There would be I don't want to say revolution, but more people would be involved in doing something about this. And it's crazy.
What you bring up, Vlad, is the subject of our second podcast. Yeah. That will be the question of political apathy, complacency. Why don't Americans pay enough attention to politics? Why are they not aware of the dangers that lie ahead? And there are
In my opinion, it's through no fault of their own. It's not encouraged. It's not taught. It's actually discouraged. What are you told? Don't talk politics. Don't talk religion, right? So that we don't have conflict. But you have to have some conflict, and I don't mean physical. I mean discussing, debating what we're doing right now. You have to have some conflict to make progress, to complete your thoughts, to come to certain conclusions. Otherwise, you just live in this state, you
that's
know.
that's why the future is as risky as it is, because people are not paying attention. They are
Right.
wrapped up in their private lives, which is what is most important to any individual. But what people need to realize is that the condition of the public life, of the national life, has every bearing on how good or bad their private lives are going to be. Everyone
And they're
depends
and
on a
future
rich
generations to
economy.
come, and all the
And
future generations to come, all their family, their
exactly
kids,
right.
their grandkids.
Exactly right. We'll get into that more, as I say, on our next podcast. Now, the main thing I think there is to discuss in this podcast is how successful Donald Trump and Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, will be in cutting spending. And that brings me to my principal worry, my main concern for the country. I don't believe the effort to cut waste, fraud, and abuse in all the administrative agencies and departments will cut enough money out of the budget to make a substantial difference. Elon Musk himself said that his goal is to cut $2 trillion out of the budget by July 4th, 2026. If he does that, it doesn't accomplish anything. We have a $2 trillion annual budget deficit projected for every year well into the future. If he cuts all of that $2 trillion, and it's very iffy whether he will get around to doing that, given all the court cases that are impeding their actions, and everything else in the fight that's going to have to go up to the Supreme Court eventually, and all the time that's going to pass from now to when that happens. And it's not a matter of waste, fraud, and abuse. It's a matter of actual programs, actual agencies, bureaus, and departments who are doing things. It is not up to government to do. All they are doing is interfering, impeding economic progress. They are not doing things the Constitution says the government is authorized to do, first of all. So I think rather than looking at the waste and inefficiencies in thousands of programs administered by hundreds of federal agencies, administrative agencies, instead of that, what we have to do is consider a broad category of spending, discuss its importance to the country, its usefulness to the country, its unusefulness to the country, and then eliminate it. So let me give you an example that I think is not authorized by the Constitution, basically, and is everywhere in view today. Corporate welfare. Why should
Oh yeah,
government have the ability to pick winners and losers among the
like the
private sector companies?
like the
Um,
bailouts, right? It was like a decade or so, a couple decades ago.
the bailouts where even conservatives like Lee Iacocca ran to government to bail out Chrysler Corporation. That was many years ago. But anyway, why should any company have to, rather than accept the normal risks in a free market and
Because
deal
they're too
with
big to fail,
competition?
right? They're too big to fail.
Well, there's that. There's that also. But even small companies are running to government and large corporations. They're sending lobbyists, consultants, contractors in order to get benefits for themselves. The politicians, they hate to disappoint the lobbyists and consultants because they depend on the same lobbyists, consultants, and the organized interests that send them to Washington to fund their upcoming campaigns. So they are loath to disappoint the lobbyists who are asking for help. And there is a situation in political science, it's called an iron triangle. And what it is three legs to the triangle. The Congress is one leg, the administrative agencies is a second leg, and the outside organized interests forms the third leg. The organized interests appeal to the politicians, Democrats and Republicans, for some kind of public assistance. The politicians, especially the ones who are chairman of the Appropriations Committee, and the administrative agencies depend on that committee for their appropriations, and the Oversight Committee that has the power to cancel any project. So the chairman of the Appropriations and Oversight Committee makes a phone call to the head of the administrative agencies and says, this is what I'd like you to do with respect to this business who I'm depending on to fund my next reelection. So you see that bit of corruption. Why do I call that corruption? If all are created equal, then none are entitled to anything someone else must pay for. It's the taxpayers who pay the bill for all of the corporate welfare. If once we would disentangle this mess and deauthorize Congress from picking winners and losers in the business community, we can save hundreds of billions of dollars a year. That's one idea. A second idea is, well, let me ask you this. Why should an able-bodied working age man or woman have to pay taxes to support able-bodied working age men and women who are eligible for entitlements simply because they don't go to work? They shouldn't. So there should be eligibility requirements. They should be strengthened so that individuals who can work can decide to work or not work, but they won't be on the public dime. The taxpayers won't be bailing them out. So these are just two of the broad categories I can think of to cut federal spending by trillions over time. We elect the men and women who write the laws that create the conditions in which we all prosper or perish. It is not a matter of altruistic sacrifice to get engaged in politics. It's a matter of self-survival, self-interest.
100%.
For the sake of all you have and hope to hang on to and send down to your children and grandchildren.
The American dream, a better way of life. Why does everybody come here, right?
That is exactly right. We will be discussing the American dream in great detail in episode 3, but in episode 2, let us look into what makes Americans apathetic. Vlad mentioned one real factor, but there are many factors, and you can't change your behavior until you pinpoint what your behavior has been and why it is self-destructive. Thank you very much, Vlad. Thank you very much, viewers.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. Let's close this podcast off with a big thanks for joining us on this Foundations of Freedom first podcast episode with Dr. Jerome Huyler. If you found value in today's conversation, please don't forget to like and share and subscribe on our social media. Help us build the America First movement this country so desperately needs. You want to dive deeper into Dr. Jerome Huyler's background, his experience, his writings, his publications, just Google Jerome Huyler, explore his published work. Feel free to connect with him directly on Quora.com and LinkedIn. You'll find his profiles there. We'd love to hear your thoughts, questions, ideas for future episodes. And stay tuned. Our official website is going to be coming soon. We're going to have lots of exclusive content as well as the podcast, this one and many others, other resources and other ways to engage more deeply with the show and the things that we're discussing here. So until next time, stay curious, stay courageous, and never stop striving to see the truth of things. Thank you. Dominate Google search results and drive real high quality leads to your business. Turn clicks into customers now. Get your free SEO audit today at setupshoponline.com. Make sure to connect with Jerome Huyler on Quora and LinkedIn, and check out his most recently published article on Mises.org, Not Worth a Transcontinental, Railroading a Nation into Prosperity, and get his latest books, or any of his books, on Amazon.com.